So I'm not sure who's responsible for making me go after Warden Seville, but someone's in a lot of trouble. So I want to tell you a little story here about a journey of a young, tough as nails, law and order prosecutor to a guy who has become passionate about the idea of what second chances can mean in Virginia. So you heard it's part of my biography there. Many of you know that I was a judge. Some of you know I was a law professor. A lot of you know I was the chairman of the Virginia Parole Board. But many years ago, just a couple years out of law school, I got a job as a prosecutor, a young assistant prosecutor. And a couple years after that, I'm 29 years old and get the opportunity to run for Commonwealth's attorney. And so I ran a campaign, law and order, right? That's what I felt like my community wanted, and I won. And so I felt like that's the way I had to be as a prosecutor. Now, my assistant prosecutors all had instructions. Remember, there's a human being in that defendant's seat. We're not trying to pile up convictions. But I was hard charging, especially against repeat offenders or violent offenders. And so one day, we just finished a jury trial. It was a malicious wounding case. Just finished a jury trial. I had won. Don't remember what the sentence was in that particular case, but after it was over, I get a message. I'm back in my office. Said, a couple of judges want to see you back in chambers. Well, that's a little nerve-wracking for a young attorney, as you can imagine, being called back into chambers. So I'm racking my brain. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? And so I go back there, and there's actually two judges there. Now, later on, they became my colleagues. I knew them as Tammy and John, but back then, they were honorable. And I walked in and said, "Yes, Your Honors, what have I done?" And they said, "Have a seat." So I had a seat there, and they started launching into their spiel about how they wanted to start a drug court, a recovery court in that jurisdiction, the 30th Judicial Circuit. And let me tell you something. I wasn't in trouble, thankfully, but I felt like I was in trouble because I'm not about these soft on crime policies. You're telling me someone's going to get charged with a crime in my jurisdiction, and we're just going to drop the charges if they do a couple things? Not a chance in the world. Not a chance in the world. But they were explaining to me how we can't do this without the prosecutor being on board because it doesn't work that way. Prosecutors have to help refer and be a part of the process. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what am I going to do? And what I did was I looked at the judge and said, okay. And I walked back into my office, and my mind's churning. And I walked back all the way through my office to where my chief deputy's office was. He was about the same age as me. We kind of came up through the office at the same time as assistant prosecutors. And he was sitting behind his desk. I slumped down into the chair across from him and said, "We got some problems here. But the judges want us to participate in this process. There's a process you have to go through to be able to start a drug court, a recovery court in Virginia." And so I said, "I'm appointing you to go, just attend the meetings, go through the process. I'll figure out some way to avoid this by the time it actually becomes a problem." So he did that. He went to all the trainings. He went to all the meetings. And it's a long process. So about a year later, they're moving along in the process, getting closer. Well, lo and behold, the Virginia General Assembly appointed me to be a general district court judge. So I left the office, and my chief deputy becomes the Commonwealth's attorney. Ends up getting elected a couple more times after that. But something funny had happened. He'd been to all these trainings. He'd seen the power of what can happen when you give someone a second chance. And so he's enthusiastic about it. Not only does he start the drug court, but he also assigns two of his prosecutors to essentially run it because it was unfunded at the time. And I was a general district court judge. I shrugged my shoulders, whatever. That's his deal. He's the Commonwealth's attorney now. I'm going to go back to my job of, speeding tickets and inspection stickers and misdemeanors. Well, 4 years after that, I get elevated to the circuit court in the 30th Judicial Circuit. And not long after that process played out, that it occurred to me that, oh my, now I'm going to have to preside over this drug court that I was fighting. And so I decided I need a crash course. I need an education here. And so I went to talk to other judges, pick their brains about how they did their recovery courts. I went to watch actual Sessions Drug Court, went to conferences, went to a conference where the lead singer of one of my favorite bands was a graduate of a drug court, and just waxing poetic about the drug court model. But I was still nervous about it. I'll never forget the first two. We did it Tuesday afternoons. I remember walking into the courtroom that first Tuesday afternoon. They hadn't yet had a graduation. They'd just gotten started right before I got there. And one of the participants in that courtroom, one of the drug court participants, in a room full, frankly, of people who would not have been in the courtroom if it weren't for other factors, was she was a woman then, but she'd been a girl a little bit ahead of me in high school. She was the drum major at our school. That was a big deal at that time. And I know all the freshman boys just thought she was the greatest thing. And there she was. And she had some things happen in her life. She ended up being our first graduate of the drug court. But I remember sitting in that court week after week, getting to know these participants, seeing what can happen when you give somebody a chance, when you give them some help, that lives can be transformed. I saw people who came into we called it a recovery court by the end, but I saw people come in to that recovery court with no other interest other than I can get my charges dropped. And by the time they finish, it's an afterthought because they've gotten so many other things back. Just because we gave them a hand. I saw individuals look me in the eye who I'm talking about second chances, never had a first chance. The first week that you do everything right, we called it having a 100% week. All the drug screens were good. You went to all the meetings you had to go to. You met with your counselor. At some point, you have to have a job and work, and you do everything right. We call that 100% week, and in the courtroom, we'd clap for you. And I'd look at you wearing the robe, had a lot more hair then. And I'd say, great job. I'm proud of you. And the number of times I saw somebody just with tears welling up because nobody ever told them, good job. I was fortunate that we didn't have a lot growing up, but I did have parents telling me, good job. So, I also saw not just those lives transformed, I saw the lives of entire families transformed. You've never seen anything until you've been in a courtroom for a drug court graduation and see mamas crying because their child, their son, their daughter, who they thought they'd lost them, is back to them. So over the 10 plus years that I presided over that recovery court, changed a lot of the way I thought about what we're doing in the criminal justice system. So I somehow find myself, I retired from the bench a couple years ago, found myself as the chair of the Virginia Parole Board, another opportunity to dive into what second chances mean. Tried to start a lot of things. I'm still hopeful we're going to get a lot of them done, even though I'm not there anymore, to make it more transparent, to open it up. But also part of my job, I felt like, was to help convince everyone else on the board you can take second chances on people when they've earned it. So now I'm at the Virginia Department of Corrections. Again, I'm still not quite sure how I ended up here, but I'm proud to be here. And it's an opportunity for me to dive into this space even further. You know, in Virginia, somewhere upwards of 12,000 people are going to be released from incarceration every year. More than 90% of incarcerated individuals in Virginia are going to go home someday. We have to be about second chances because there are going to be a lot of people that need those second chances. It has to be our mission to make sure people are prepared. We're going to be doing some things in the coming weeks and months. Some of you have heard some of the things we're talking about. Lawrenceville, we've got some plans. It's all designed on when someone earns a second chance, how do we put them in the best position going forward? And here's why that's important to me. I want to tell you a little bit about my guiding philosophy as I wrap up here. So there's a guy named Napoleon Hill. I don't know if any of you ever heard of him. He was born in 1883. He was born in a log cabin on the Pound River in Wise County, Virginia, where I'm from. Not far from where Red Onion State Prison sits today. And Napoleon Hill has this quote. He started writing at the age of 13. He was a mountain reporter for small town newspapers all across America. Went on to become the most popular motivational author and speaker in America just after the turn of the last century. And he had this quote that I'll never forget. I love it. It is literally true that you will succeed best and quickest if you help others to succeed. And this is the way I try to guide myself professionally. You've heard the term live and let live. My phrase that they're sick of hearing at headquarters is win and help win. Right? For me to win, the people around me have to win. For me to succeed, the people that I work with in my office have to succeed. Right? If they're succeeding, then I'm succeeding. It's the same with those that are under supervision, on probation and parole, that we supervise out in the community. It's true of those that are in our care here in one of our facilities, right? I cannot succeed as the director of the Virginia Department of Corrections if you all don't succeed. Win and help win. So, frankly, I'm going to tell you, I'm still a little law and order. I think there need to be consequences for lawless behavior. I think that we need to, in a lot of the criminal justice reform that we've talked about in recent years, sometimes I feel like victims get left out too much. But I also believe this very deeply, that being open to second chances and giving hope to individuals is not a soft on crime policy. It's just the opposite. Frankly, it's a tough on crime policy. To give someone assistance when they need it. That's what helps guarantee long-term public safety. To give not just the tools to succeed, but the opportunity to use those tools. That's how we get long-term public safety for all the people that are coming out of Virginia Department of Corrections and going into our communities. Now, there's a 29-year-old prosecutor that would never have believed he'd be up here saying something like that. But you know what? I think a lot of people in this room can agree. We can change. Okay? Thank you all for letting me talk to you today. Really appreciate the fact we've been able to have this event here. I'm terribly excited about it. Thank you all.